This week, we welcome new friend of the show, Mr. Kirk Chritton, as we nerd out about all the stuff we've been enjoying this past week. We talk about comics, we talk about movies, we talk about some of the latest things happening out there all over the pop culture universe. Welcome to the Infinite Taylorverse. Warning.
Red alert.
Danger, Will Robinson! Danger!
That's the emergency alert.
This episode is full of spoilers for some of the latest and greatest nerdy movies and shows.
Spoilers.
Listener discretion is advised. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Infinite Taylorverse podcast. I'm Billy Taylor.
And I'm Taylor Oxner.
And this week we're back to talk about a lot of fun stuff happening out there in the pop culture universe. But on top of that, we've got a really cool special guest with us for the week who's going to join with us in nerding out about all this fun stuff. So we would like to introduce new friend of the show, Mr. Kirk Chritton. How you doing, man?
Doing great. Happy to be here.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great.
As usual, we'll just kind of start with what we've been nerding out for the week. And Taylor, what have you been nerding out about for this week?
I've been nerding out. I found a YouTube channel that plays all the G1 Transformers episodes, like in chronological order. And so I've been watching that with my kid. He's 4. And so it's like his first real introduction to those characters, which is pretty awesome. But also watching it, just been like, oh, I want to see what the voice actors actually look like now and all the voices that they do. Do you know Megatron's the same voice as Fred from Scooby-Doo?
I did know that. Is that Frank Welker?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just found that out that this week, and the most of Soundwave's voice is non-electronic too. It's unbelievable. But yeah, those guys, between him and Peter Cullen, those two voices are incredible and shaped a lot of my childhood. But it's cool to see, just a human make such a big, the whole Autobots roll out.
Yeah.
It's crazy coming out of a vocal of like a human being. But yeah. It's they're goofy, and it's a lot of fun to watch those old cartoons with my kid.
It is awesome. I love going to cons and getting stuff signed, and Peter Cullen is a huge bucket list guy that would just be so cool to meet in person. Let's see. I've been nerding out about this week. So, that the past 4 or 5 years, suddenly my sons and I have kind of jumped into anime a little bit. That's not something I've really did a bunch of growing up, but we kind of do lately, and we just finished My Hero Academia and Hunter x Hunter and all that. Well, one that's been kind of a white whale, I guess, would be One Piece, because it has 1,155 episodes. And when you hear that many episodes, it's kind of hard to want to get into something that big, because that's a commitment. But over Christmas break, we started watching it, and I think as of earlier today, we watched episode 55. Out of 1,155, we've only got 1,100 to go. But it's actually been quite awesome. And it's funny because we just started watching it, and I read that Netflix, which is doing the live action version, and I have to say, there's only 8 episodes of that, and we actually chose to watch that first, which maybe, I don't know, maybe that's a bad nerd, but that show was pretty impressive, and season 2 of that's about to come out. But because Netflix has got all kinds of stuff going on with One Piece right now, I just read an article that they're going to be kind of truncating it a little bit and getting rid of all the filler, getting rid of all the, how older cartoons will kind of, at the beginning of an episode, the first 5 minutes is a long recap of the last episode. They're just going to kind of delete out all that stuff, and it's going to be closer to about 500 episodes is what I read. I start thinking, of course, we're 55 episodes in and I read this. Honestly, the completionist in me is kind of happy we're watching it this way, but all that to say is, it's been pretty enjoyable. My son has been reading the books, and I think he told me there was 108 books, maybe something like that, around 108 books, and he's on number 87, I think. And he said that what we've been watching so far is pretty spot on to what he's been reading, and it's just been a good show to watch. And just, I don't know, now that my kids are getting older, it's fun to have stuff to do with them that I like too, so that's been kind of fun.
I think the editor for that show has just got to be insane, right?
Right.
Like, it's just with that much episodes to keep track of and that ensemble cast that they have. It's like editing X-Men, I'm assuming.
Well, Kirk, what have you been nerding out about this week?
I mean, I'm nerding out about the same things that I've been a consistent long range nerding out about. I mean, my comic book collecting is focused on Bronze Age Marvels, and so I will go to Planet Comic Con or the garage cons around or whatever, and I'm just filling in all of my Marvel comics from the early '70s up through basically the dollar price point. Listening to the podcast Marvel by the Month, so I'm just filling in all these issues cheaply so that I can read along with Marvel by the Month. This podcast, if people aren't familiar with it, done by three guys in Portland, and they started with Fantastic Four #1, and then every episode they cover 1 month's worth of Marvel comics starting from Fantastic Four #1, and they're currently up into like 1977.
Wow.
Gone through. They have tremendous guests also. Tom Brevoort, the editor at Marvel, has been on their podcast. They have Matt Fraction and Brian Bendis and all these people on also talking about stuff. But the crazy thing that I have done because I nerd out about these Bronze Age Marvels is I used to sort all my comic books by just alphabetically by title and issue number, and stuff. And I decided to make it easier to read along with the Marvel by the Month. So I'm reading it in advance because I enjoy the podcast more that way. I separated all my Marvel comics out and I have sorted my entire Marvel collection by publication date order instead of by title, which
How long did that take?
very long time. I was like past the point of no return when I'm like, this is insane. And then when I
Yeah.
want to go and I want to pull like a run of a particular title, I'm pulling out like 7 short boxes to go through and find the issues that go in consecutive order. So I don't recommend it. I'm crazy for having done this.
Yeah, yeah. That's incredible.
It makes it easy to follow along to the podcast, though. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's kind of a flimsy reason to make a really inconvenient way of sorting your comic books.
Hey, and if you're like me, sometimes you're just looking for something to do. So in the
That's
future, when you're done with the podcast, maybe you'll sort them back, and there's fill up some time.
I have often said that it's kind of, going down and sorting comic books is my own comic book therapy at times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, hey, for our listeners, I thought I'd tell you a little bit about Kirk here and kind of his history and all this nerd stuff that we love so much. I know a lot of you guys might recognize this name, Jim Steranko. And back in, I guess, around the late 80s, early 90s, you kind of worked with him and did some editing and
It was actually in the mid '80s.
mid
So
80s.
it was,
Okay.
when the rest of Kansas City was involved in the I-70 World Series. I actually was living in Pennsylvania, working for Jim Steranko. It was the only time in my life I've not lived in Missouri. I was out there, and I was an associate editor, assistant editor. I think was my title for his Preview magazine, which focused on movies primarily and stuff like that. So my first wife and I had just gotten married. We moved in to the brownstone that Stranko owns in Reading, Pennsylvania. I took up residence in the apartment in that brownstone that he had lived in. He had moved out of the building, and I just worked and worked and worked on as an editor working with Jim, and Jim really training me on how he wanted to run the magazine. Very very shoestring operation. It was me as the associate editor, Murray Bischoff, who was a former news reporter for the Comics Buyer's Guide, kind of ran the business office for the mail order business that he had, and my wife was kind of helping mail packages, and that was the entire staff. So
Nice.
yeah.
So you got any fun stories that any nerds
Well,
like us would enjoy?
I mean, Jim he's a very eclectic person. I think most people who've kind of encountered him at conventions understand that he's just I'll just leave it at eclectic. Very smart and very creative, obviously. I mean, just immensely creative. And part of when I went through with him, he was really working very close with me on how to edit the pieces and how to write pieces. We take articles that other people had written and completely tear them apart and completely rewrite them because he had a very particular way that he wanted to do that. And he always wanted to be creative. There always needed to be a new angle on something, and did all that art direction work himself. So I mean, I sat there with him, but he also was talking about like there's a story that he did for, I'm going to lose the issue number now. There was a Superman 400, 300. There's a Steranko story that's like full of like 2-page spreads, the whole thing that he did as part of this anthology 100-page issue or whatever of either Superman or Action Comics. And he talked about that his challenge to himself was to have no corrections on the artwork, no opaquing, no whiteout of anything, and it was like all perfect. And those pages were actually sitting on his art board or on his drawing board, kind of tucked to the side. I think the entire time that I worked with him, I was there for a few months working in the building before things came up, and I went a different direction in life. He was he's always somebody who tells stories. He's got all kinds of stories. Maybe 1 out of 5 has a element of truth in it, and the rest are all set up for the punchline or whatever. And he would just rave and tell stories and about the people he really idolized: Jack Kirby, Wally Wood, Orson Welles. So yeah, he was a very interesting and kind of iconoclastic sort of person that kind of was living to the beat of his own drum. And so it was a big learning experience. The things that he taught me about writing, I literally do not draft an email today without applying the editing techniques and the eye for sharpening language that I learned from Jim. So
Wow.
That's awesome.
yeah, yeah. It was not an entirely happy experience for me. That's why I didn't stay for a longer period of time.
Yeah.
But very, very, very much an inflection point in my life, and very instructional on stuff too. So
For sure.
one of the insights I had about Jim was that he only did like 37 comic book stories or something like that. He's done very little comics work for as massively influential as what he was. But he also is an escape artist and magician, and he did that in
Okay.
his teenage years as well. I realized in recent years, thinking back about what he's done, is that part of the reason that he burned himself out on doing comics, and he was always blowing deadlines and stuff like that, was that you look at what he has done once he got his feet under him. He viewed every page as a magic trick, as doing something that the audience had never seen before, and revealing something or having kind of the prestige, not just at the end of a story, but literally every page needed to be that innovative. And that's a tough bar to set for yourself,
Yeah.
to just always be like, every page has to be amazing in a way that people have never seen before. Part of why he's so influential, though, he was just doing things that using comic books in ways that people hadn't seen before, and some of that was kind of bringing the language of movies into the comics and the way that he tracked the panels across a page and things like that. Part of it was the op art. Part of it just anything new. It was all about escaping from the traps
Yep.
that he had set for himself, or pulling off a big reveal on every single page.
Well, I know you yourself worked professionally on some comics in the 80s and 90s. Can you tell us a
Yep.
little bit about that?
Yeah, I kind of broke in. Originally, I was writing for fanzines, so I was doing articles for kind of semi-pro fan magazines and stuff like that at the time, and that turned into then an opportunity with Now Comics back in the late '80s. They published a wide variety of things based out of Chicago. I ended up coming midway onto a book called Die Kamikaze, and writing that book along with the artist who had gotten on right beforehand. It was my good friend, Rob Davis. Rob had gotten onto the book, and then the writers were leaving the book. And so they're like, we need a writer. I was talking to Tony Caputo, the publisher. He's like, well, if I had you write this, we have 8 days before this has to go to the printer. How quickly could you get Rob something to start drawing? And I'm like, well, tomorrow morning. And we literally produced the first issue, Die Kamikaze #4. The first one that we did together was 8 days, start to finish. Of I believe that was writing, penciling, and lettering. I think Rob was doing the lettering at that time. I don't believe he inked that, but that it was 8 days before it left our hands. Certainly. And I did that, and then later on, so I did 9 issues of Die Kamikaze, and then was doing a book that I co-created called Velvet for Malibu later on in the early '90s. And then during that time, I was publishing a zine called Comics Career Newsletter, which is all about how to break into the comic book business as a writer or an artist, to get in as a professional. And that started as a photocopy zine, and eventually I turned it into a tabloid newspaper with direct market distribution. And we had all kinds of interviews. I interviewed Dick Giordano when he was executive editor at DC, and Tom DeFalco when he was editor-in-chief at Marvel, the editors of Eclipse Comics and multiple other publications as well. And it was all about practically what people should do. So many people want to become comic book writers and artists. And the smartest marketing move I made was that on my comp list of complimentary copies, every editor and publisher in the comic book business was receiving my publication for free, and that they loved it. And I got tons of letters. Diana Schutz of Dark Horse was a regular feature on my letters page because she was just loved it. Marvel,
cool.
actually, at the time, they were so happy with what I was doing with directing people about the right way to break into the business. They said, if you want to put a subscription flyer together for us, we will literally insert that with all of the rejection letters that we send out to people who have submitted their work. And that was a huge marketing opportunity for me. I drove a lot of subscription growth for the publication that literally Marvel and I think Eclipse Comics was doing it, and some other comic book publishers as well. We're literally putting my flyers into along with their rejection letters. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
Well, hey, so our listeners know we're based here in the Kansas City area, and I'm sure the majority of our listeners are also from the Kansas City area. Something that you've done recently that's really cool that I wanted to share with the listeners, and we can post some links to it later for you guys, is you've created this really neat fan calendar that has all of the upcoming, TV shows, movies, but also local Kansas City events, Comic-Cons and things like that. Tell us a little bit about that and tell our listeners, how they can, go find it and subscribe to it.
Right. This is something I put together. I'm a real estate agent by day, and I just couldn't, being a nerd, I couldn't bear the thought of sending out a Chiefs or a Royals schedule to the people on my mailing list. And so I'm like, well, I want to do something a little bit different. So I put together a refrigerator magnet calendar of this schedule. It's upcoming movie premieres, like you said, TV series premieres and local events and stuff like that, and sent that out back at the first of the year. And as a part of that, I've also created an online calendar, an online Google calendar that people can go access, and they can also subscribe to it. And it's updated I'll continue to update it ongoing with things that are going on so that people can just check and literally see it on their own calendars. So the link I have set up to be able to get to that is bit.ly/KC fan calendar, all one word, all lowercase. And that will just take you to the landing page for the calendar that you can go view the calendar online. It gives instructions on how to subscribe to it. I will just warn people, the landing page you're going to see is not as beautiful as I would like it to be. I made the rookie mistake of picking the template that web page was going to be based on before I'd done stuff, not really realizing I could not change the template after I had set it up and created the QR code and all of that sort of stuff. And I'm like, okay, so you will not make that a fan calendar any less useful for you or less enjoyable for you. It just go there and you know that I really could probably design a better web page if I painted myself into a corner with this particular software.
No, it's really cool. I like the fact that, like you said, you can go to Google and subscribe to this calendar, and it just throws it into your already existing calendar on your smartphone or your computer or whatever.
Yep.
And yeah, it'll show all the upcoming movies and shows. And we got Planet Comic-Con coming up and a bunch of other, not quite as huge events coming up. And it's just really nice to see it all in one spot and not have to really think about it.
Absolutely. And that was my goal too. And I like the fact that, now I have the excuse to update this stuff and keep track of it all, but it's also easy access for me later on when I'm like, no, wait a minute, what date, is that movie coming out, or, what is coming up here in the next month in terms of some of the events and things like that. And obviously I was producing this calendar back in November, and already some dates have changed and things like that for the hard copy calendar, but those can just automatically be updated and add new things all throughout the year. So it's a great resource for people.
Yeah. Well, hey, let's just kind of go ahead and jump into some of our typical things here. We got a little bit of news out there with Marvel and DC and all the other stuff, but we've been talking a lot lately about Spider-Man and the Avengers Doomsday stuff coming our way. I'm sure I know the answer to this question. How invested are you into the MCU?
Well, I'm deeply invested in the MCU. I've not missed an opening weekend yet for a new movie, so there may be a few of the TV series that I haven't caught every single episode of, but MCU is amazing. When the first Avengers movie came out, I walked out of the theater with my family, and I'm like, man, when I was 14 years old, I must have wished really hard on that birthday cake candles, because it just
Yeah.
came true in such a massive way.
I remember having a conversation with my own mother when she looked at me and she goes, "What's that like seeing something that you've been reading for a decade plus of your life and then you just see it in real life?" And this was right after the second Iron Man movie when she asked me that. And I
Yeah.
just was just like, I can't describe. It's like seeing, I don't know, man. It was like the first time I met Jim Starlin, and after we'd always seen this MCU stuff, and Thanos and all that, and that man, all that came out of that man's brain, and I was just like, just couldn't even talk in front of the guy,
I
and then
cannot.
to see it
Yeah.
in real life, it was just like, I know it's not real, but I'm seeing it, and I know the little kid inside of me that read the Infinity Gauntlet and all those things. It's just, yeah, it's mind bending. I can't even describe that feeling.
It blows me away that grandmas across the country know who Mantis is,
Yeah.
Yes.
or I mean, like characters that were obscure even to comic book readers, unless you're like me and were an Avengers fan in the early 70s.
Yep.
Avengers growing up looks like my dad and I used to go, and I used to get the 25-cent bins, which would have the Avengers logo that looks like a swirl almost. And always got Avengers books because it was more characters for my buck. That's why I would always get you got an Avengers book, an X-Men book, and maybe a Spider-Man book if had the money for it. But that's how I got more bang for my buck that way.
Yep. Well, there's been a little bit of news again this week about, like I said, Spider-Man and Avengers. For fans of Stranger Things, that series just ended, and they've got a lot of folks in that series that I guess Hollywood's looking at a little bit more closely since that's wrapped up. And it sounds like, again, so far this is just a rumor, but it sounds like the actor Joe Keery, they're kind of possibly eyeballing him to be the MCU's Harry Osborn. So I yeah, I again, this is at this point, this is in the rumor stage, but I could see that guy being a really cool Harry Osborn.
Yeah, I mean, I could see a lot of people being a pretty cool Harry Osborn. Yeah, I mean, could you imagine like a Timothy Chalamet
Yeah,
Harry Osborn?
definitely bring in some more people into the fold if they put that guy in there.
Right?
Let's see. This is kind of an obscure thing that it was out there on the same rumor pages that I kind of follow, but it sounds like something's going to happen in Spider-Man Brand New Day that it didn't say whether this was permanent or just something that happens, but we might see Tom Holland have to deal with a little bout of organic webs.
Oh,
Oh.
I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. And how would they, with Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, that's just how it was from the get-go. So what would they have to do to make that make sense? And let's see, we know that Mark Ruffalo is supposed to be in this movie as the Hulk. Well, he was just in an interview this past week and was asked about Doomsday, and he said that he is not in Avengers Doomsday. So is this a Andrew Garfield situation where he's just lying to throw us off, or is this true that we're not going to see Hulk in that movie? That'd be kind of
He's supposed
interesting.
to be in that Spider-Man movie.
He is in the Spider-Man movie, yeah.
And do we know if Spider-Man is actually in Doomsday?
Not seen that Spider-Man is in Doomsday. I have seen that he's in Secret Wars, but not Doomsday.
Well,
and it,
maybe, possibly that's the bridge movie there.
Yeah, could be.
am I right that She-Hulk is supposed to be in Doomsday though?
Yes.
I did just recently read that. So, okay, Tatiana Maslany has some stuff going on right now on the behind the scenes stuff with Disney Marvel things. And from some of the latest stuff I've read about her, she's making it sound like she does not want to return professionally on the professional side of things. And it's funny you guys asked that because if you can picture the actress Mary Elizabeth Winstead, what was she recently in? She was recently live action Hera Syndulla in the Star Wars stuff, but it sounds like she might be the person that jumps in to take over if all that's true. So,
I'd be okay with that.
yeah,
That's a
Yeah, it makes sense to me. Although Tatiana Maslany was just sublime in the role.
yeah. I loved that show. We both did. Taylor and I, we've talked about it, and the backlash that stuff gets, sometimes we just don't understand it.
Yeah, the people who are kind of brigading against those things seem to have come out in full force. But it was a fun show. And were the effects perfect? No, they weren't. But it's a TV show. That you're just not gonna get on the budget and the time constraints they had to get what we would love to
Yeah.
have.
I mean, people don't complain about Joss Whedon shows special effects.
Yeah,
Right.
true.
Yeah. Sometimes I feel like people forget, no matter how good or bad it looks, none of this is real. So it's cool that we're
Right.
getting it in the first place.
Hey, I'm a fan of classic Doctor Who, so
Oh
I'm
yeah.
not gonna,
Yeah.
I can get by with cardboard backdrops and aliens made out of bubble wrap. So
Yep.
I'll be all right.
Absolutely.
If there's some low res CGI, I'm okay.
Yep. Same here. Speaking of that, my wife and I actually just this morning rewatched The Mummy with Brendan Fraser from the 90s. And for all the low budget CGI, that's still a pretty good movie. Well, let's see. Some more Marvel stuff. There's been some talks going on about Black Panther 3, and it sounds like there's a little bit of news and a little bit of rumors. They did just announce that the actor Denzel Washington is going to be playing something in Black Panther 3, but there's a rumor, this is not a news bit, this is a rumor, that Will Smith is going to be playing something in Black Panther 3. So, a little bit of rumors and news there for that movie.
I could take or leave that.
Do we know is Ryan Coogler attached to that?
Yes, he's still part of that.
I'll go anywhere that he leads me.
Yep. Let's see. So Secret Wars, we know we're a little bit a ways away from that. That's going to come after Doomsday. But it sounds like Wesley Snipes is going to return one final time as Blade in that movie. And um, I have a feeling we're going to see a lot of farewells from some of our past favorites from the past 3 decades show up in that movie just before they kind of, do a Crisis on Infinite Earths with us and reboot the whole thing.
I just hope that when they have the old characters, I hope they're passing on to the new characters in
Yeah.
these movies so that we get a visual of new characters. And I know they're going to keep Hugh Jackman around as like an old man Logan kind of situation where you had 2 Wolverines running around, which is fine. I mean, it's always been that way since the beginning, I feel like, with that character.
Yeah.
But
And it's funny,
still,
this past week they did announce that moving forward, there will be 2 actors playing Wolverine, and whoever they cast as this younger version is going to be there, but also they are going to incorporate some old man Logan stories and use Hugh Jackman. So yeah, I think that's a good idea because he's Wolverine at this point. Who's Hugh Jackman? He's Wolverine.
I do hope we get those handoffs from older characters, to the newer
Yeah.
things. That was Endgame was obviously hugely satisfying, but one of the limitations there with having, the original kind of Avengers cast mostly signing off all at the same time was that we didn't get that handoff. So
Yeah.
hopefully they're using this to do something that's more emotionally takes us a launch pad to the future because
Yeah.
we all felt the fact that kind of the air came out of the MCU a little bit after Endgame just because there wasn't the propulsive,
Yeah.
things pushing it forward.
Yeah, it wasn't square one, but it was like 1.5.
Yeah, yeah. But the same way I'll go wherever Ryan Coogler leads me. I'll go wherever the Russo brothers take me as well in terms of directing Avengers and etc. So
Yeah.
I just think they're amazing, everything they've done.
Yeah, you can totally tell those guys, and they love this stuff. They're not just doing a job, they love it the way that we do.
Yeah, and that seemed to be the key. I mean, starting from the beginning with I'm just going to sit here and blank on the director of Iron Man's name, John Favreau. You know, got the source material. That's the biggest thing that's been so important for the MCU is that they've managed to have creative people who respect and understand why the source material works instead of trying to change it and
Yeah.
work around it and dumb it down or avoid it and things like that. That's the worst of the Marvel and DC projects are the ones where they're like, oh no, we're doing something different. Sure, you've got comic books, the comic books, but those comic books didn't know what they were doing. It's like, well,
Yeah.
why are you even bothering?
Oh, we talk about it all the time. It's a guy wrapped in an American flag running around, and there's a talking duck and a god, and it all fit. It all is in the same story.
I remember something I read decades ago. Tony Isabella told a story, and now I'm blanking on whether it was Man Wolf or Werewolf by Night. But it was one of those 2 properties of Marvel that they had a company come in and they were going to license. This is back in the 70s. They were going to license. I'm going to say it was Werewolf by Night. But
Makes sense.
yeah, but the company was like, oh, no, we're not. It's not going to be Jack Russell. We're not going to do that, and we're not going to actually call the movie Werewolf by Night. No, that's the. And Isabella was like, you do know you don't have to license this from us just to do a werewolf movie,
Right?
right? If you take
Yeah.
away the name, you take away the main character, it's just a werewolf movie. You can do that
Yeah,
without.
really, truly,
Yeah,
truly.
want to recognize that Jenny Blake Isabella now writes under that name, so I don't want to. I was referring to her as Tony, which is a name that she still accepts and uses. But
Yeah.
I did want to recognize that I didn't want to just jump over that.
Okay.
Well, the final thing with Marvel this week, and speaking of passing along the torch, it sounds like Hawkeye Season 2, Jeremy Renner might not be too involved with, and it's going to focus solely on Kate Bishop. So it's
That's
funny we're talking about passing along the torch. It sounds like we're not going to see much of his original Hawkeye, and we're going to see a lot of her in this.
well, she's fantastic. So
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
And I can't think of which movie it was where we saw at the end, the young girls, Miss Marvel, Bishop, starting to kind of collect their own group. So that's going to be awesome when we finally see this whole Young Avengers thing come through the way that they do it. I'm pretty pumped
Yeah.
for that.
they've stretched that storyline out for quite a while at this point.
Well, over with DC, we all know how much I loved Superman last year, and they're in full force working on Man of Tomorrow. And it sounds like one of the latest rumors, again, this is not news, this is a rumor, is that the Flash might show up in this movie. It didn't say how briefly or how long, but there's just a big rumor now that the Flash is coming around. And then simultaneously, there's another rumor going on out there. I don't know who all everyone might follow on social media, but a lot of fans want the actor who played the Flash on the CW show, Grant Gustin, to show up in the new DCU. They're sending messages to James Gunn all the time on Threads and Twitter and all that stuff. But just to add fuel to the fire, Grant Gustin recently posted something on his social media where he was, lifting weights, getting back in shape. His hair, he's grown it quite a bit longer and he's dyed it blonde. People are like, oh my gosh, he's going to be Barry Allen again. It's awesome. And, people are just kind of going crazy just based on what he's looking like right now, alongside this new Flash speculation.
It's what we want.
It's what we want. But yeah, that's kind of been fun to watch all the comments on that stuff.
I think James Gunn with this is kind of in the realm of let the people eat cake. It just seems like he wants to see joy.
Yeah.
Anyway, he wants to cultivate that joy. And to me, so far, he's doing a pretty good job.
The other thing I have with DC this week, if you guys can think back to that Blue Beetle movie we got a couple of years ago with Zolo Maraduena, well, he just announced that he is 100% coming back as Blue Beetle in the new DCU pretty soon in a new project. And he basically someone asked him, are you still part of the DCU? What's going on? We've heard both answers to this question. And he just confirmed that, yes, there's stuff in the works and he's still part of the new DCU. So good for him.
That's awesome.
Over on the comic book side of things with DC, they just recently announced that there's this new book called Bizarro Year None coming out. And you guys know I love Superman and all things Superman lore. And it's going to be a 4-part miniseries and it's going to be written by Kevin Smith. So all stuff that I love. So I think that'll be kind of fun to read when that gets here. Let's see, over with Star Wars, not a whole lot of news. And I know we briefly kind of hinted at some of this stuff several weeks ago, but Kathleen Kennedy, who is the president of Lucasfilm, this week has officially stepped down and passed the torch along. And it could not be more perfect. The new president is now Dave Filoni, but he's co-presidents with Lenwyn Brennan. I'm not 100%, well-versed in this person, but the fact that Dave Filoni is now the president of Lucasfilm, that's going to be in such good hands.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I know we've talked about comics and MCU. Kirk, are you a big Star Wars guy?
I'm a medium Star Wars guy.
Yeah.
You know what? Me too.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen all the movies. I saw, Star Wars on September 3rd, 1977 for the first time. And, drove 75 miles to be in the Empire Strikes Back in the theater on opening nights. I've definitely done my part on those.
Yep. Well, how about not Star Wars? How about Star Trek? Are you a big Star Trek guy?
Now, I used to say that the thing I look for most in a woman is that she can talk about Star Trek as if it's something really important.
Yeah. Well, this past week, did you happen to catch the 2-episode premiere of the new Star Trek Starfleet Academy show?
I'm going to have to catch up on it. I've seen good things about it.
Yeah, that one.
I'm really excited about Becky Lynch being in it.
Yeah. Well, I love Star Trek. It is just something that it's funny when I think back. When I was a kid, it was my dad's favorite show, and something about being the grown-up in the house's favorite show, it was like, oh, I don't want to watch Star Trek. But then I get a little older, late high school, college, I start actually paying attention to it and thinking, oh my gosh, this is so good. And then I have to go back, and I think one of my graduation gifts from my dad was the box set of Star Trek The Next Generation on DVD and just burned through that whole thing and all the movies and all the other stuff. And anyway, long story short, I love Star Trek. And I watched the first 2 episodes the other night. And my wife, who we've talked about this a million times, she's not a big nerd like me, also really enjoyed the first couple episodes. And if you were into Discovery at all, it's that same time period. And it was really fun to see the stuff they're using to connect past Star Trek, because this is like 800 or 900 years into the future of Star Trek. And I guess this isn't a spoiler, it's in the trailer, but one of the holdovers is the Doctor in Starfleet Academy 900 years in the future, or 800 or whatever it is the hologram Doctor from Voyager. It's the same. It's not just the same actor. It's literally that same character. And so I don't know. I loved it so much. It added that
That's
whole
awesome.
kind of the new era, the new students, and all this with a lot of flavor from the old stuff. And I'm really looking forward to watching it each week. And Taylor and I have talked about this a lot too lately. Binging a show versus having to slowly consume it one episode per week. And I would love to sit down and binge it, but I'm kind of happy that it's going to last for several weeks.
Yeah. I'm a
Yeah,
big believer in week by week.
I couldn't do it with the last Daredevil show. It was too intense for me to do it week by week. So I waited.
You just waited and knocked it out.
I did. I knocked it out in a day and a half.
Let's see. A little bit more talking about just bringing stuff back. I saw a thing that they're making a Men in Black 5 with Will Smith returning. Because if you remember, the fourth one didn't have any of our original cast, but this fifth one is supposed to have Will Smith back. So we're getting some more Men in Black.
Cool.
Were either of you guys a fan? In high school, I remember reading the books, but were either of you guys a fan when Disney made that movie maybe 10 or 15 years ago? The movie was called John Carter, and it was based on
All
the
right.
the Princess of Mars. Did you guys like
Oh
that
yeah,
movie?
I thought it was fine.
Yeah, I liked it. I thought that it really was unfairly kind of, got a bad rap.
Yeah.
And it wasn't perfect, but it was really good. It should have been a hit.
That's exactly how I felt. And it's funny because when it came out, I had not even 3 or 4 years before read several of those books. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they're making a movie of this? That's so cool. And maybe I was a little more excited than others might have been, but it sounds like they are coming back. Disney's making a sequel to that movie. It's in active development right now. So I think that's going to be fun to watch.
Wow.
Yeah. I was, again, this was me going back to my Bronze Age Marvel stuff. I was introduced to John Carter in Marvel's comic book series
Yeah,
about John Carter in the mid-70s.
that's awesome. Oh, a little bit more Disney. Incredibles 3 is happening. That's in the works. And the voice recording is actually going to start in March. So I didn't even know that was coming. So that's pretty cool. And it's also funny that my wife randomly wanted to watch The Mummy this morning, the Brendan Fraser, The Mummy movie. And there is both a continuation of that movie happening as well as a continuation of The Scorpion King with The Rock. So we got a
Wow.
couple of those coming our way.
And the rock's everywhere.
Yeah. And then the last bit of news I have here is that we've mentioned this when it was kind of in the rumors stage, but it sounds like officially we are getting a new Neverending Story movie reboot. So that franchise is going to be started back up, and you listeners,
Will it ever end?
I know
Will it?
it's not going to end.
Let me be the first person to make that joke.
Yeah. I love those originals, even the really, really, really bad third one. I love them. And
Yeah, well, Jack Black's in it. How do you hate it?
that's true. Teenage Jack Black's in there, but he's a bully, which is odd for him. Hey, that's about all the news for this week. Before we get out of here, I feel like we should take advantage of Kirk for a second and ask if you had anything else you wanted to share with us, any cool stories or stuff you wanted to throw out there.
Well, for 10 years, I was on the senior planning staff for Planet Comic Con from like 2008 through 2017. And that was really my first big opportunity to interact with a lot of celebrities. So there's a story, my favorite story of interacting with the celebrities during that time was with Margot Kidder, who played Lois Lane back in the original Superman movies with Christopher Reeve. She was a guest at the show. And she made a big deal to me. I was escorting her from Celebrity Row, where they do the autographs, over to the Grand Ballroom to do her Q&A. And she made a big deal, like, I don't know who a lot of these people are, and the other celebrities and stuff like that. But then as I'd escorted her over, she did her panel, and then I was escorting her back over. And as we were heading back towards Celebrity Row through the access corridors in the back part of Bartle Hall. We were coming up to a corner, and a group turned the corner. It was people escorting Michael Dorn and Marina Sirtis from Star Trek The Next Generation to do the next panel that was coming up. And as we turned the corner, Marina Sirtis goes, "Margot Kidder!" And she reaches out her arms, and Margot Kidder, they embrace. They have this big moment. And they're like, "Oh my gosh." And so great to see you. It's so awesome. And then, parted separate ways. They went on to do their panel. We headed back towards Celebrity Row, and we got kind of down the way a little bit. And I'm like, "So how do you know Marina Sirtis?" And she's like, "Was that who that was?" I thought it was Sarah Douglas. And I'm like, "This isn't Sarah Douglas."
Hilarious.
And she was hilarious. I just, when she passed away, that was really sad, but she was just such a character and so full of spunk and good energy and stuff. She's like, "Was that who that was?"
That's hilarious.
It's just fun to be behind the scenes sometimes for things like that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I know I've only been a few times, but I'm a big Superman fan. And over in the small town of Metropolis, Illinois, they have their big Superman celebration every summer. And I've been about 3 times, but one of the times Margot was one of their headlining guests. And yeah, she was just a hoot to everyone. It was a lot of fun meeting her.
Yeah, she was amazing. Really fun.
It's funny, my dad passed away a couple of years ago. And my hometown is in southern Missouri. It's about an 8-hour drive from here in the Kansas City area. And he only was ever able to attend one Planet Comic Con with me, and it was the one you just mentioned. So I'm the one with Marina Sirtis and Michael Dorn, and that's awesome.
Yeah, that was the one with we had most of the cast of Star Trek: The Next Generation,
Yep.
and William Shatner. I mean, we didn't have Patrick Stewart because of Broadway commitments and stuff.
Yeah.
But that was I found myself. We did the special event on Friday night with that cast and with Shatner moderating an event, and I at one point found myself backstage with Shatner and the Next Generation cast and just a few of their like handlers and stuff, and it was like one of the most surreal moments of my life when I'm realizing like, how am I walking amongst these people? So how have I managed to cross this invisible barrier and into this other realm? So
Yep.
it was fun.
That was a good one. It was at the time a bit out of the price range to do like a whole cast photo op, and my dad and I did a photo op with LeVar Burton and Brent Spiner, and I love that photo.
Those are just the greatest people. The Next Generation cast are really wonderful.
Yeah.
And it part of the magic of conventions like Planet Comic Con is these shared memories with family and friends and stuff like that. So it's wonderful to know that you've got this memory with your father.
Yeah.
Good.
It's about emotion and it's about community and about finding your tribe and shared experience. That's what these conventions are all about. And that's part of the joy of being a part of making it happen.
That's really cool.
After the show, I'll send you a photo. My dad was dressed as a Starfleet officer, and I was dressed in this big, bulky Lex Luthor battle armor suit that I was cosplaying in at the time.
Great stuff.
But yeah. Well, hey, Kirk, thanks so much for joining us this week, man. And tell our listeners one more time, what's the little URL they could go find your calendar?
They can go find the calendar at bit.ly/KCFanCalendar. All one word, all lowercase. And that'll get you to the landing page, and you're just one click away from viewing the calendar, or you can get the instructions on how to subscribe and have it be right in your main online calendar.
Awesome. Taylor, any last words before we hop out of here?
It was great to meet you.
Wonderful to meet you. Been a lot of fun. This has been a blast.
Awesome.
Good.
Well, hey guys, as for us here at the Taylorverse, I've been Billy Taylor.
Taylor Oxer.
And come back next week, guys. Same Taylor channel, same Taylor time.
Bye.
Bye.